Good morning. So, in this context of faith and having faith to hand on to others, I want to pick up from last week. So, last week I talked about the first couple of 5-year goals. Just to remind you, the first is to establish a fourth site of this church in South Bristol, and the second goal is to look to plant a church in another city like Bristol in the next 5 years. Now, those two goals alone are faith-stretching goals, but I've got 3 more to share with you now. And the first one relates to social action. It's amazing to see what God has done among us in the last few years in terms of social action. Richard Townsend has joined us as a church, and we've inherited the Street Life ministry that feeds over 100 people each Saturday evening down in the center of the city. We started the Encounter meeting, which is a next step for people that we meet through Street Life or City Hands or just us as people in the church going about our lives in Bristol. And we've gathered an amazing team of people with a heart for those who are disadvantaged or vulnerable. The second part of our vision of helping Bristol believe is restoring broken lives and serving the city. I think it's important for us to recognize that to some extent we're all broken, aren't we? We're not the sorted people who are trying to fix the broken ones. We all need to know and understand God's love. But the Bible does talk about the gospel being good news for the poor. That's people who may not have had the opportunities that we've had, or who have particularly suffered or struggled in some way. In Bristol, there are people who are living in deprivation, experiencing homelessness, addiction, and hopelessness. We believe that the gospel is good news for those people, and it should look like it. So our third 5-year goal is to provide community, homes, and employment opportunities for those experiencing poverty, injustice, and isolation. It's always been part of our plan that as we draw people into our church community, that we're able to help provide housing and support people in finding employment. But this means more than just having a safe place to stay. It means building friendships with people, providing support, and helping them find community. At the moment, we're actively exploring a partnership with a Christian charity called Green Pastures, who, through people investing with them, they buy houses for churches to run to provide a home for people. We're believing God that in the next 5 years, we might be able to provide 1 or 2 houses that will provide a home for people to be able to put down roots and grow stronger and healthier, like that Isaiah 61 vision of oaks of righteousness. Let's move on. Time's flying. Our 4th and 5th goals relate to the resourcing part of our vision, and they probably underpin all the other goals. So the 4th goal is all about leaders, and it is to develop new and existing leaders who will resource new sites and church plants. We've now run 3 phases of a leadership development program that's equipped people to step into leadership, grow as a leader, and equip them to lead teams and ministries. There's been a whole raft of men and women who have taken part in those groups, and it's been fantastic to see. But we're looking to now take that further. So it's a dual thing of developing the leaders we already have, as well as drawing new people into leadership. We're going to need to do that again and again if we're going to start new sites and plant new churches. We'll need more leaders, more people serving and volunteering and getting involved in teams. So I'd like to ground this really, really practically. It will mean each one of us taking a step. For some of you, it will be to take a step into serving. For some of you, it will be to take a step from serving to leading, perhaps leading a team or a connect group. For others, it may be a step from leading a team to leading a ministry or supporting others who are leading. If we raise up leaders and help people to develop at every level of church life, then that will result in people who are equipped to take on be part of a site leadership team or to be part of a church planting team. I think we are incredibly blessed as a church with all the leaders that we have. And it's been amazing to see how individuals have taken steps of faith in the last few years. So in the last year, James Lee and Jamie Finley have become elders of this church. Julia, Emma, Jess, Steve have become key volunteers, volunteering between 1 and 3 days a week to help serve us as a church. And people have led connect groups for the first time, and we could go on and on and on, but it's been amazing to see what people have done. I'd like to say to every one of us that there is more. There's more in you that's yet to come. And as one of the leaders in this church, let me say, we will do what we can to help you flourish in the things that God has called you to. We're going to be doing a leadership preaching series in April, and we'll be signposting more ways that you can grow and be equipped. Whether you're a man or a woman, old or young, whatever your background or ethnicity, we want to develop you as a person and as a leader. Ultimately, what underpins all of that is discipleship, how each of us is following Jesus and how we're helping others to follow Jesus. Okay, the fifth and final goal that we have is about buildings. And it is to own a building or buildings that will be a permanent home for City Church in Bristol. As I'm sure you've heard, this church has existed for nearly 25 years, but we don't own a building of our own. We've explored opportunities to purchase facilities over many years, but nothing has come of those things. We've had the use of some great facilities that have been a real blessing, like Bradley Stoke School and here at the Elm Grove Centre, and more recently at Chester Park Primary School near Fish Ponds. But we are looking for a place that will be, it's like an aspiration to own our own building in Bristol where our team could work from, and that could be a midweek venue that could be used for many of our midweek activities like Alpha and Encounter and Youth and Little Elms and many, many other things that we aspire to do. Currently, we're limited by the availability of the buildings that we rent. But we'd love to have our own home that we can make our own, and that we could make it a welcoming place for people to come into, that might have space for storage and a kitchen that we can use to cater for the ministries we run that provide food. So what would success look like in all these goals? Let's dream that in 5 years' time, we would have another site of City Church in Bristol. Let's dream together for a church planting team making plans to move to another city like Bristol. Let's dream for 1 or 2 homes for people who need housing. Let's dream for more leaders and all of us being better equipped. And finally, let's dream for a building that we own. It's worth saying that all of these goals are on top of all the usual activities of church life. As Andy said, discipling, caring, ministry, all built on a foundation of grace and dependent on the activity of God's Spirit. In the midst of normal church life, These are the specific goals to help us press on with our vision. And this is for each one of us. So what can you do? Well, let me just suggest three helpful ways that you can respond. The first one is to pray. Prayer is our greatest weapon, and it's our greatest opportunity to cooperate with all that God is doing. We know what happens when we pray. God moves, but also our hearts are changed. So come and pray regularly with us as a church, and we'll keep praying until we see God move in all these areas. Secondly, you can serve. If you're already serving, please keep serving. When we restart in-person services again and your old team leader rings you, be willing to serve again. We can't function as a church without all of us in the body playing our part. And if you aren't yet serving, please consider and look for a way that you can serve. And thirdly, so pray, serve, and finally give. Please keep giving financially. This is an incredibly generous church. But all of these 5 goals, they're faith-stretching and they will cost us money. We recognize that all we have comes from God anyway, and what a privilege it is for us to give back and to contribute towards God's mission. He will provide everything that we need. We're absolutely confident of that. But if you aren't giving regularly, please consider starting to do that. And if you are giving regularly, then please keep leaning into generosity. We'll be having gift days next month in March to raise money to help us prepare for these faith-stretching goals. We'd love everyone to participate and give something. The amount that you give doesn't matter. It's about the size of your heart. And finally, my prayer for us is that these goals would propel us forward into the purposes of God. And let's believe Him that He's going to move in remarkable ways.